Hey, hey, Gen X family. Here we are. Okay, remember those long, long summers that we used to have? Middle school, elementary school, and so on, and they lasted forever. At least it felt like it. Well, does that happen to you today? Do we see the seasons going by a lot faster? Does it seem that way anyway? The perception is for, a lot of us, we say, wow, time just flies. Well, I am going to give us some things that I didn't give you before in the shorter form, where maybe some practical things that we can do to combat that, a few more little things. But also I'm going to explain some of the theories that are out there in a little bit more detail and some of the studies that they've actually conducted over the years. And also I'm going to put all the links to the important ones down in the description below, so you can go and look up some of these things. And I already posted in the community post about, I posted a picture of the book When Time Flies, or Why Time Flies rather, that I think that if you like this type of thing, it's a little, it's not for everybody, but hey, I think a lot of you might even enjoy that. Now, what happens is we think about time as it passes, but then we think about it again after it's over and we're remembering an event or we're remembering something from our lives or whatever's going on. One thing that startles me sometimes, and it happens frequently, is when I think about the music that we listened to, let's say the 80s music, and I go back and I'm like, okay, in the 80s, you know what was old? It was like The Doors, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, Pink Floyd was, all that stuff. All that was old. That was ancient music to us. It was like 2 decades before us. Look at where we are now, okay? I listen to 80s music because it's, it's my thing. It's my comfort. It's my, it's something that I'm very attached to. And it makes me feel young again. It makes me feel, really back in that moment. But you know what? It's been, oh my goodness, 40 years for some of those things. And I am just baffled at how that happened. So let's delve into some of these things, because as we were, looking at things like The Doors and Janis Joplin, all those that I mentioned as being old, I still look at Def Leppard, and I still look at Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I look at the Talking Heads and the Clash and some of the stuff that I always liked. I look at that as now, okay? So, again, it's such a strange thing. Now, it takes me back when I listen to my music, and I think a lot of us really do have that connection with our music. But one thing that I found out when I was researching some of this over the past little bit is that as we get older, there's one explanation that some scientists have made that said our neurons fire slower. Okay, so if they're firing more slowly, then that means that your internal clock sort of seems to slow down, which means, if your internal clock is slowed down, then everything else seems to be going faster. That one makes a little bit of sense, I guess, but it's so much more complicated than that. Now, the sense of time also, a lot of folks will say, the people who study these things will say, well, when you get in a flow, you get in the flow of something, like you're creating something great, you're doing something really fun. The old saying about time flies when you're having fun. But this is actually true. They talk about when you're in the flow of something that you really love and that you're enjoying it and you're engrossed in it, it seems like, again, it makes you have a more, in-depth experience. So it goes into your brain in a different way. It's saved in a different way. And that kind of gives you a perception, because of some of the things you love that you're doing, gives you a perception of something more meaningful. So when you remember it, it doesn't seem like it's gone by as fast. Okay? So there's some of those. Now, there's some really interesting studies, though, that I said I want to mention Again, description will have links in it. But there was a guy named Steve Janssen and a guy named William Friedman who did a study that connects the illusion of passing of time, that that we seem to think it passes more quickly as we age. Well, we know that that's objectively not true, because time is time, for that matter. But we know that obviously, even though it doesn't speed up, why is it that to so many people we believe, especially as we get older, that it does actually speed up? Well, one of the studies showed that if they took the subjects, different ages and so on, that showed that more than 2/3 of subjects, different ages from 20 up to the 50s and beyond. I think that one study was, I think it was the Janssen and Friedman, and they said more than 2/3 of the people in the studies, 67%, to 82% of them actually said that time passes more quickly than when they were younger. Now that includes the 20-year-olds. So there's something else going on here. That was the point that they were making in that study. So does it track does it make sense to say that it actually seems to really, really speed up because we're aging and all those other types of things? Well, that's logically not going to fit with what I just said. It's what they discovered there. No, absolutely not. So when you ask the 20-year-olds and you ask a 40-year-old, 50-year-old or something, is time going faster for you? You would expect, if that was true, you would expect for the older person to say yes, and the younger person to be like, nah. Not happens. Again, large numbers there in that study. Now, what we see is there's an anomaly in there. I mean, they say that, let me get this one statistic here. The 2/3 of older and younger people say time has sped up. And it's largely, again, everyone of all ages says it goes faster with age. But if they're young, their perception of age is not quite what ours is. And so, again, there's some questions in there that are raised by those studies. Okay. Now, things that fascinate me about this are things like, for example, a guy named Steve Baum did a study in 1990 something. I believe it was 1991. He did a study, and he wanted to show that the perception of time has more to do with how busy we are, our busyness factor in our life, okay, and how we're just always constantly moving and just doing so many things. Well, yeah, okay, that makes time seem like it's flying by. And I can kind of get that. I can kind of get on board with that. That makes pretty good sense. Now, the busyness and the perception of time, he studied, I believe, from the perspective of senior citizens, people, I don't want to call us senior citizens if we're over 40 and 50, but, sometimes we get called that. So, hey, it's all good. Now, what they said is around 60% of the seniors, okay, the ones who responded said that it passed more quickly, but they also said they felt more purpose in their lives. Now, 13% said that time was slower passing. Now, here's where this breaks down and where it gets a little bit more interesting too, okay? The 13% that said time was slower with age, that group, guess what? They tended to be more depressed. They need to, or tended to self-identify or have been diagnosed with depressive disorders of some sort. So that's interesting. That study shows that the perception is related possibly to psychological things as well. Okay? So it's not objective on any measure that I can find anywhere. Okay? Now, there was one study, Wittmann and Lehnhoff, did one study that used people from, check out this time period, or check out this age range here, from 14 to 94. My goodness, that's a range. If you can't figure it out in this range, you're never going to figure it out. So from 14 to 94, okay, there was no, brace yourself, there was no statistical difference across the age groups when they reported time going more quickly as they got older. No statistical difference. The 14-year-olds didn't say it just wasn't a thing. 14-year-olds were out there saying like, oh, no, time still goes slow for me. And that's just not. But now here's the one little thing. It's kind of a blip in the study. It's kind of, I'm just going to say it's kind of a slight difference. Okay, we had older subjects that were more likely to say, that were the ones that were 50 and over, right around 50 and right around there and older, they say that we are the ones who are more likely to say the past 10 years flew by. I remember reading something years ago that said, after you get to a certain age, like 30, 40, and so on, and your neurons start slowing down and all that, they say that, well, one thing that you do is you look back on whatever it is, your memories. You look back on, well, I read this book a few years ago, and it turns out, you're saying this in 2024, and the book came out in, 2006, and you're like, I didn't know it was that long ago. That happens to me all the time, and tell me in the comments if it happens to you. But anyway, what they said was there's no statistical difference, only one little anomaly there between the 14 to 94-year-old group. It's the ones right there in their 50s that say the past 10 years went by just like that, which is why some of that stuff kind of gets all confused in our heads as to how long ago that book was written or that movie came out or whatever. Now, you also see, though, an interesting thing. At the end of that, I know I'm saying the word interesting a lot, but I think this is just such a fascinating study. There's a different adjective right there. They say that after 50 or so, after 50 in your 50s, it levels off. Okay, so it goes back to where people are no longer saying, oh, well, everything has sped up and blah, blah, blah. So what I would like to do is, challenge you to think about the age you are now. Think about how fast the past 10 years have gone by to you, and think about, is that true for you? Okay, I'd love to hear any comments about that as well. But one thing that I really want to do is add some more practical ways that I've discovered we can probably change, at least to some extent, and especially, as we're hitting in the 50s, where it's really starting to make us feel kind of, like we're just flying through life like crazy. Okay, now some practical ways to slow down this illusion that time is going faster. Practical ways. One really good one that sounds great to me, I think I need to try this one, is to build a structured but varied schedule. Now, I actually do that unintentionally sometimes. I have a friend and I who go to concerts all the time and plays all the time. I have another friend who I go with to half-price books all the time. I have yet another friend that I go and watch professional wrestling with him, and we hang out a lot. Just all different things. And I don't plan everything way ahead of time. I like to have a little bit of notice, but I also like to know, some structure. But what they say happens is, if you leave a little flexibility in there, which I always try to do to some extent, I don't want somebody just popping into my house without any warning, but I try to leave some flexibility in there, and they say that's really actually very healthy for you, because now you're leaving the time, if you can make time for something unexpected. while you're out there doing whatever you were supposed to be doing. And then you're like, oh, well, I want to go over here and maybe just take some time and do this problem, whatever this is, or go take some photographs over here, just do something different. They say that it actually helps us see the time that we're spending that day as less monotonous. Okay, if we're very rigidly scheduled, that's one thing. But if we're scheduled with various events and flexibility, that seems to be the sweet spot. So try that. Now, they also say probably a great idea for most of us is to have weekly goals or monthly goals or whatever you're comfortable with. Heck, daily goals, I don't know. But they say having some kind of goals to hold you accountable to trying new things, okay? Now, remember, the new experiences, like I talked about on the shorter video, new experiences will actually stick with you more emotionally. Okay, they'll make more of a impact on your memory, and therefore it will feel more stretched out. That's amazing. Okay, that's absolutely amazing. Now, one of my favorite ones, I think, is just, it's a simple one, and probably some of us do it sometimes, but really go old school. Okay, do some time without technology, like a day, a weekend, or something. I know it's hard. I know we all think we need our phones all the time, and some of us really actually do for a lot of reasons. But if you can go old school and plan a tech-free day at least, or at least maybe a tech-free several hours, okay? Like, for example, think about what did we do before all this technology was bombarding our lives every minute of every day? What did we do? We read physical books, right? That's a little bit slower. That like makes more of an impression. I have so many memories in my life of reading books on airplanes and reading books on just all over the place, outside of college classes, waiting to go in, reading Stephen King and everything else. I have, very vivid memories of some of those. Now, also reading, but write as well. Writing and reading go together. So if you feel inclined to write a journal or, even start a blog, like a old-timey, more, without the vlog aspect, start a blog of some kind, keep a journal or anything like that. And one thing they say too, when you're keeping the journal, one thing you probably will find the most helpful about it is it shows you the things that you've accomplished. Okay, with your goals, especially as you're setting new goals for yourself all the time to get some more, novel experiences in there, therefore, hopefully solve some of this illusion that we're under about time. Now, the technology compresses time. Okay, the fact that we're on there and everything is just at the speed of light, it compresses time, which, makes it go fast, but slow tech, slow living gives you more sensory involvement, so therefore it's going to make it feel like, you've actually lived an entire day without it flying by, or a week, or whatever, okay? Now the last one, it's related to low tech, okay? However you plan to do the low tech thing, I would advise it. But the low tech, doing slow immersion activities, things that you're going to get really into, like with that flow I mentioned, okay? The whole getting into the flow, something you love to do, something that you're really into, okay? That is something that will stick as a memory, and again, make the time not so compressed. It'll seem longer because you have a stronger, sharper memory of it. At least, it's embedding itself into our brains a little bit more, they say. Now, I used to love, for example, to paint and draw. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a commercial artist at some point, when I was in high school and even when I first entered college. Okay, I wanted to be an artist, and I don't get a chance to do it as much, and I need to start taking a chance, of time. I need to take like a moment here and a moment there to do something like that. Go back to just even getting out an old sketch pad and drawing something, anything, okay? Because that's novel to me now. It used to come just so naturally. Now, I also want you to know that as we get older, they say we get more satisfied with life. In general, we start, whether it's to accept things more or whatever. So they say that kind of the 50s and above seems to be that magic age for a lot of people. So again, if you're struggling with rumination like I do sometimes, and depression and so on, and just that feeling of, oh my goodness, where did my life go? Any of these tips, I hope, maybe you'll pick one. I hope any single one of those or all of the above help you in one way or the other, because I'm certainly putting those into practice for myself. Love you guys. Thank you so much.